Hey, and welcome to another OJ Health Radio. Now, today's guest, we have a guy, Socrates, aka Stephen Aish. We'll get into the story of why I call him Socrates in a little while. But if you've been listening to the podcast since way back years ago when it was called the Beyond the Champion Show, we've been through different places. There was Beyond the Champion Show. Then I think there was a triathlete version. There was the athlete upgrade. Been a couple of versions before we settled on OJ Health Radio. But Stephen was one of the first guests and one of my oldest industry friends, I think we'll say. And we're friends now, even though we don't see each other as much as we say we want to, even though we live as close as we can. But Stephen, thank you so much for joining me here. How you doing?
Always a pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Good. Now, for the
I will give. You know what? I'm going to do the court of law because I'm all about adding value to your listeners. I will give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Being as absolutely transparent and vulnerable as is required on these podcasts, because I'm all about value and I'm all about impacting people in a way that they've got utility. There's actionable content. They can take it. It resonates with them. They can do stuff about it. So my little detour, and you can see how my brain works, my little detour on how are you is to actually be brutally honest and say the last 12 months have been the toughest of my existence. And while not actively suicidal, I wandered into checking out the game a few times. As in, so much hit as a sequence, knocked me to my knees, was 10 times more than my ability to cope with it. And it was brutal. And I didn't think it was ever going to end. And I'm sure that will be a decent chunk of the content we go into, because as you mentioned, everyone came to me. You know, you wind the clock back just as COVID kicked in and lockdowns, and, you know, no exaggeration, on a daily basis, people were reaching out to me. Coaches I didn't even know, never heard of, were messing. What do I do? Help. Someone recommended you, sending me clients. They're doing this, they're doing that, asking me to speak to their groups. I was one of the go-to guys. I was one of the go-to guys in the industry for kind of mindful awareness, inner peace, obviously with a background of physical fitness and coaching and whatnot, and a successful Spartan warrior, which is pretty cool. You got to do a mud run or two, haven't you? You know, grandchildren stories, that kind of stuff. And to be totally honest, it's only having gone through that. I mean, off the top of my head, as I said, I got no shame being absolutely transparent here. You know, I've got a cabinet full of trophies. I've got British and world records. I've got championships in this. I've coached internationally, and people might say, oh, listen to this ego. I can assure you that left the room a long time ago. I'm telling you this because I was someone. I was up that mountain, higher than most people could ever climb. I'd pushed my mind and body to the absolute limit. And I tumbled down and literally broke my neck, proverbially. Went back to middle of last year. Wife had a cancer scare, and that hits you hard.
I bet.
That hits you hard. My own health started to deteriorate a couple of months after that with long COVID, to the extent where there's pretty much nothing they can do about it. Now, I've been extremely fit. We're talking international level athlete fit.
I think that's a place. Let's give the listeners who didn't hear your original background, because I want to go into where you were starting, because there's 3 phases of Steve that I know, and I've not personally known the first one, because you changed with the mindset. We first met in 2013 at an event with my other mentors, Cliff and Marta. And I remember there was the exercise about belief, when you move, you close your eyes and you move your arm about, and you can go so much further when we're not using that negative language about being tight. And that really opened up my eyes about the language we tell ourselves. But so who was that? I think we would say the physical warrior with the world records. Who was that, Stephen?
Yeah, that was a very insecure person that had built a suit of armor to be accepted, because I was very shy, insecure. I wouldn't say socially awkward. I mean, I'm 47 now from some angles. hindsight's a wonderful thing. I've got no one to impress, nothing to prove. You know, I consider it the heart rate, the up and down. I've been up, I've been there, I've done it, I've got the t-shirt, and I hit rock bottom. And if anything, that expanded my map of awareness and acceptance and deepened my compassion and my ability as a coach to truly connect with people. Because it wasn't, oh, look where Steve is. How am I ever going to work with this guy? You know, he's too much, he's too full on, he's in it. I came right down to pretty much where my ideal client is. Lost at sea, close to giving up, angry at the world, externalizing stuff. So wind back about 8 or 9 years. It was all physical. That was all I knew. That was all I knew. Mum put me into Taekwondo when I was 10, mainly because I was a little squirt with a big gob. And, you know, she thought you're going to get bullied or flash down the toilet. So let's at least let you defend yourself in some way. And I'm glad she did, because I was hyperactive. I was very energetic. And it gave me a way of channeling that. I was the youngest black belt in the club at 14. Very fortunate with that, because then my instructor got me to run the warm-up for the adults class. You know, you got this 14-year-old kid that is literally training 30 to 40 adults, but then assisting with the drills and the other bits. So, you know, like this, I was a teacher. I was a teacher at 14, and I've taught Taekwondo and Kung Fu and kettlebells and weightlifting and you know, PT, strength and conditioning. You name it, been there, done it. Got many t-shirts. And it was all physical fitness. It was all push. It was all bigger. It was faster. It was stronger. It was records. It was personal best. And you know, when you take stock, you kind of slip into neutral. Yeah. And you start to reflect. You start to realize. Because I've always been a very deep thinker. You know, irony of the term Socrates. I think Plato was. I was seeking. I wouldn't say I wasn't content. I was looking for answers. I've always been a very deep thinker, and my college lecturer at the time recommended a few people, as well as the London Buddhist Centre, where I've had many a session, weekend retreats, introductory courses and stuff like that. And you realise the benefits of these things along the way. And I started to get deep into philosophy, as you do. And it wasn't until around 38 that I realised the value of reflection. There's two lots of noise. You've got your internal weather, which I think is a great way of describing us. Your internal weather. You've got emotions, which is the language of the body. Then you've got your thoughts, which is the language of the head. And that internal weather, you know, it could be a nice Caribbean beach, or it can be a thunderstorm. It all depends. And I think, you know, I keep echoing Blaise Pascal, not sure of the time, you know, good 300 or 400 years ago, that said most of our problems would disappear if we allowed ourselves to sit alone in a room for 10 minutes. And Ollie, I started to do that. I started to look at why I needed another trophy and another record and these, you know, smashes. So I was doing David Goggins before David Goggins was even on the map.
That's not even an exaggeration.
It isn't. No, I've literally pushed myself physically until I knew if I didn't stop, I would black out. My vision was going on and off. I was literally almost losing consciousness. You know, we're talking 5 hours of kettlebells, you know, and ironically, a few years ago, as someone that was always a power athlete, I thought, you know, I need a new challenge. I think I used the word domesticated.
You became domesticated as an athlete?
No. I thought, you know, I feel domesticated. I need a challenge. I need to do something, not for anyone else, but for me. And I took up sprinting. I really enjoyed it. And I decided on, you know, what most people would regard as a very worthwhile and well-known physical and mental challenge, a marathon. So I decided to go to Thetford Forest and do one. And the furthest I'd run 12 months prior to that was 5K, just plodding around the park. And I did a marathon in five and a bit hours. Is that
the one where you took Leo as well, your son?
No. That was the one where we walked a marathon when he was about 6 or 7. Yeah, and that's interesting. I'll come back to that. Yeah. Remind me of that afterwards. That's a powerful story. That's a powerful story, which reminds me that Marcus is due in a year or so as well. So slot that tab for later. Yeah. So, I mean, looking at the Fitbit and then Strava, it was 110 floors of elevation. It's gravel, it's single track, it's sand, and
People say Norfolk is flat.
All over now. Thetford isn't. We're talking off-road kind of, quad bike kind of terrain. And I'd done it, and I'd done it for the sheer reason that when I say domesticated, I'd become. It felt like the cobwebs had begun to settle. I spent so long reflecting on who I was, and to be honest, that is a very dangerous thing, because I'd gone from full physical to full mental. You got to be careful what you say nowadays, haven't you? I'd almost let go of that warrior mentality, and I deeply immersed myself in reflection and understanding myself and compassion and accept the forgiveness and the rest of it. And I taught that literally 90% of anyone that came to see me for anything. It was largely mindfulness. Even personal trainers, they had food, they had gym, and they realized that missing prod of that trident was the fact that the person that's knocked on your door for help has a history of stuff and a language that not only created who they are, and a worldview and a belief system and reactions and habits and everything else that not only creates it but maintains it, and also is a predominant factor in their willingness to change. And I call this the two-way street of second guessing what might go wrong, so not budging forwards to opportunity. And then the other side of the street is keeping on doing the things that they know cause sacrifice and sabotage, and then justifying it internally in some way because that's just who I am. And you zoom out and you see this narrative play so clearly. It's almost you want to pop them out of it and let them realize their true power to create, because most of us have got master's degrees in suffering. Not to judge or point a finger, we're very good at poor little me and why have I got this and not looking after ourselves. And all fronts have a back. And if you can start to twist that in terms of your channel, your operating system, the programs you operate from, you realize that health is so valuable. And just to kind of park the car ever so slowly and close that chapter, there's numerous other things. Obviously, cancer scare, your own health, business took a nosedive. All clients left during the second lockdown. Obviously, money was tight. They were panicking. I completely get that. I was in a mess, and I kid you not, for the first time in my life, I realized that I couldn't deal with what was currently happening. It was bigger than my ability to cope with it, and I needed a fresh pair of eyes and a brain, just not at two levels, to unload on someone neutral that wasn't going to judge me. Just literally wringing that towel, because if I'm honest, that's half the healing process. Being willing to be vulnerable enough to show up and go there and face your mess and be okay with it. And then maybe get some guidance, maybe get some clarity on issues or what could go, what could help, what could work in my favor. And I remember, I'll never forget, I sat outside the gym, and before I went into the gym, I called the Samaritans. I thought, you know what? This isn't getting any better. It's beginning to impact your family. You're not the Colossus, one-man island that doesn't need any help. You're a human. There's relationships. There's parts of your map, and I use the Japanese flag as an example for this. So I mean, we could use that. It's a great example. You got the little red sun in the middle. Yeah, that's usually us. And you mentioned about shadow integration, didn't you? So we can go there later on. We've got this very familiar bit in the middle of our map that we know, we're okay with, we're familiar with, the warts and the blemishes. And then there's an extension of that map. And these are the parts that are at two levels. We either do not know exist because we don't know what we don't know, or we do know and we're terrified or embarrassed of going there because, you're going to face your stuff and it's going to hurt. We're talking real stuff that all swept under the carpet. The blaming the parents, past relationships, the inability to forgive not just others but also self. And that reason I mention this is because I called the Samaritans 3 times, and it rang out for 20 minutes each time. And Ollie, wow. If it wasn't, I know, and I'm not blaming them. I just know how busy they were, and that's an indication of where we were as a collective. If I'm honest, I rang them 3 times, not back to, I thought I'd give them a few days. So within the space of a week or 2, I'd rung the Samaritans 3 times, and it rang out for 20 minutes each time. And I just held up and I went about my business. And I said to myself, if it wasn't for 2 things, my family, which keep me in the game.
Mm-hmm.
They are my why. And also the work I've done. And a few people have mentioned this to me. They said, you know, if you hadn't done the work you've done, you probably wouldn't be here. And that's very true. And that's very humbling. And it's also fucking scary. But it's very true, because I gotta take some responsibility for the fact that the work I've done got me to a place where I realized that, you know, and this was that kind of blue pill, red pill, or humble pie, whatever you want for your beverage, you know. No one is coming to rescue me. And no one needs to, because I'm not lost. And the reality there is I don't even need saving. And as soon as I realized that, it all made sense. Because that struggle, that test, whatever you want to call it, I mean, literally, I thought I was cursed at some point, you know, not to go full tin hat. But I literally was going to take the carpet up and see if there was a pentagram underneath, you know. I won't go into the details, but so much hit me over such a long time. I actually thought someone's got it in for me. Honestly, you couldn't make up this level of probability. It's like flicking a coin 50 times and it's the same. It's like, no, there's going to be something different. And it wasn't. And that channel of stuff going wrong, and the impacts, and then the health and the business, and literally having nothing. I mean, I've got eye surgery in 2 weeks. They've finally, after 9 months, worked out it's a cataract. Hopefully. I mean, I was an able-bodied person. Yeah, I spent 26 years doing martial arts. I knew how to move and groove. Ollie, I was bumping into things and knocking stuff over. Once a week, I'd make a drink, I'd spill it all over the floor. I was at a friend's house, and him and his dad they got a long corridor, you know, where you got the bathroom and the toilet and the kitchen, and they were at the end of this corridor, and it's a decent house, it's about 20 foot. And I said, watch me. And as I walked towards them, they said, Steve, it's like you're on a boat. I was literally bobbing side to side. Like, Ollie, I couldn't walk in a straight line. If I close my eyes and attempt, literally, if there was a wager there, you know, here's 10 grand if you can walk straight, I veer off sharp left and actually make a circle. And the interesting thing now is where this eye is pretty good close. You know, it's Predator shoulder cannon, yeah, the little dots.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if I close this eye, I couldn't tell you who you are, mate. I literally could not tell you who you are. The mouse, the little arrow, there's about it's actually getting worse. There's 4 or 5 of them on the screen. A car headlight is unbelievable. I literally can't see any facial features. I can see a bit of red, a bit of yellow, and a screen behind you, but it's an absolute mess, to the extent where I can't even recognize my kids' faces. And interestingly enough, that triple vision, which is obviously now about 4 or 5 things, if I bring text really, really close, that zones out, and I can almost read at about a few inches. Now this eye, which is literally, you know, keeping me going because it's pretty good, up close it's a right mess. And at about 18 inches, text, you know, so you get ghosting. So if I look at the mouse, there's a little overlap where there's a little bit at the top and a little bit. So if you've got like you know, eclipse, perfect example. You've got a little bit of shade above, a little bit, so it's not a perfect circle. So now, what is my brain doing? If in terms of spatial awareness, proprioception, navigation, basically we are receiving info from outside constantly in order to maintain homeostasis. Oh, you know how it works, yeah? So now what's happening, if the eyes that are supposed to be about there are here, so I can feel a tug. I can feel, and honestly, you know, not going out into this conspiratorial world, but and hopefully this lands and makes sense because it is literally raw experience. I can feel my brain having a tug of war with what it actually knows to be true and the bad information that it's got no alternative but to process and accept, even though it's completely skewing up the system. It's getting bad information, and it kind of knows that, but has to roll with it. Because I've literally struggled to walk in a straight line. I've gone around the field, and every now and again they'll put the lines on for the football pitch. And I was jogging, and I couldn't stay on it if you paid me. I am all over the shop. I couldn't trust myself carrying my kids to bed. That's how bad it got. And you think, you know, this is this is someone that almost not perfected, far from it, but you know, if you consider, I would have been 1 or 2 levels under Olympic athlete. There's no two ways about it. And that's not me, you know, blaming. I was literally, I was training 3, 4, 5 hours a day at my peak. I was there, I was doing it. I was done mad stuff. And to get to a stage where you don't leave the house for 4 days on end, you are sitting in the sofa lifeless because you are absolutely, I've been tired. I've been burnt out. I've experienced that with training, but I've never been exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally to the extent where there's almost nothing left. And this scared me, Ollie. This scared me. At every layer of surely you can do this for, there was a no. And that scared me, but didn't. And let me explain why. I'd ask myself, surely you can do it for your kids. And the answer was, it wasn't enough. It wasn't a big enough reason for me to, you know, snap out of it, jump up, do the thing. I was lifeless. I'd almost given up. There was no fight left. And then under that, and this is the importance of mentioning those layers, doesn't it anger you that your kids aren't, and no. Aren't you concerned that you're not angry that you won't do it? No. And there's, no matter how deep I went with this, I didn't give a fuck. And it didn't even scare me that I didn't give a fuck. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I know. And do you know what? Do you know what helped there? I stopped fighting. And I realized that is who you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I accepted that was who I was right now. And guess what? When I stopped fighting it, I began to heal. When I accepted that I wasn't the athlete, I wasn't this super duper mindset, mindfulness, awareness coach. I was angry. I was lost at sea. I was close to giving up, and a lot of other stuff. And then I realized something. You only build resiliency. It's like you don't get strong unless you go to the gym, yeah?
Exactly, yeah.
You build resiliency by going through the stuff that builds resiliency, not reading a book on how to build resiliency. And then as I'm laughing now because the penny dropped. I hated it. I was angry. I didn't have a target. For 9 months, I'd made over 100 phone calls to so many different people that never spoke to each other. Ollie, if it wasn't my vision, I'd have given up. If it wasn't long COVID, exhaustion, a business crumbling, and a 47-year-old former champion athlete having to borrow money off of his mum to survive, that makes you feel this big. But it's all I had. That was a lifeline that I'm grateful for. When so much is up on your shoulders as a provider, as an influential figure to your children, and they see you sitting there giving up on the sofa, struggling to get out of bed, there's so many things that were just crushing me, literally crushing me, hence reaching out. And I realized this is who you are. And the longer you fight this, thinking you're the athlete and the warrior, and it's going to kill you. That's the danger. It's going to kill you because you can only take so much. And you don't need to have 300% to break you. You can have 80%, but over 6 months.
Yep.
And your knees are going to buckle, and before you know it, smash. You hate life, and you might even take people with you. That's how bad it gets. And we see this on a regular basis on the TV, you know. People just flip. But no, if I'm honest, I think the biggest lesson from my journey was, and I mentioned the Japanese map, that the parts of my map that I either wasn't willing to go to or didn't even know existed, they grew as a function of being in the thing and facing it. Because I didn't want to. I was angry. I didn't have a target. I had no way out. I had no answers. I mean, for you to have extreme exhaustion, fatigue, dizziness, the jitters, knocking stuff over. I mean, I was fit, yeah. I held a plank and my arms were going literally like I was plugged into the mains electric.
Bent frying pans.
I couldn't do 5 press-ups. Wow. I was that weak. I would roll over in bed and literally spasm, and I'd have 4 or 5 muscle groups going at the same time. And I'm thinking, have I got a neurological disorder? Am I dying? Of what's going on? And Ollie, I had no answers for 9 months. I was on the phone. I've had more tests. I've had blood tests, lung X-rays, 4 field tests, pressure tests. I've seen 6 different people, optician, a consultant sent me to a consultant that sent me to the guy that he recommends. You know, not rubbish in the health service. They do a wonderful job. But if there was ever a place in history to not be ill, it's right now. It's a struggle out there. It really is. And not to blame them, just this is the landscape. This is the landscape. And what got me through it and what got me in a much better place was realizing that the resiliency that I didn't have for that situation, that particular chapter. You know, I can go and do a run. I can do, as you mentioned, I can roll a frying pan. I can sit there in a minute. But big real life stuff, the boulders that knock the wind out of you and can crush you, I hadn't had any of that for a long time. And that's why I mentioned the heart rate, because it's great being at the top of the hill, but your biggest lessons come from suffering, struggle, and literally that darkness of you almost wanting to give up. And that deepened me as a person, that expanded my awareness, that allowed me to connect with other people, that also allowed me to, with compassion, understand where they are and judge less, massively judge less. And I think, if anything, it improved. No, I know, not if anything, I know it improved me as a person, because you don't get strong without lifting the weights, and you do not develop a real meaningful resiliency unless you've gone there, adapted as a function of that, and then come out the other side with that story, with that growth, with the learning from it. I hated it. I was angry. I was fighting it. And then I realized I'm actually fighting me, and that's too many people in the room. And you're probably going to have to dig 2 graves, because you're never going to come out of that alive and happy. When you are at war with yourself, no one wins. And as soon as I accepted where I was, it was literally like the weight lifted. The weight lifted, all of it. And I'm grateful. I'm really grateful.
I think we go through these moments. That wasn't just a moment, like these periods, shall we say. And afterwards, we see their benefit to us. And it's the universe showing us we need to do this. But I've been through periods when my dad died when I was 15. At the moment, or in the moment, why the hell is this happening to me? I remember going home from the hospital, staring at the ceiling for like 7 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
Literally just laying on the sofa, knees over the edge, back, like just staring at the ceiling. It was one of those Artex ceilings, which you're not going to see much of nowadays. So yeah, exactly. Finding pictures of like Marcus Aurelius in the bumps.
That's the one.
It's not until after that we actually we wouldn't want to go through this again. We wouldn't want to put anyone else through it. But like, yes, I'd love to have my dad back. I would give anything to that. But I'm thankful for having that situation to help others. Just like I'm sure that now you're through, getting through, see the light at the end of the tunnel, literally having the eye operation, you can help others from a different angle, right?
In a bigger way, yeah. It's really deepened me as a person. My own suffering. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not, it's not violins and butterflies time. And my business will now be poor old Steve that went through tragedy and survived. That's not my story. It's a chapter in my book, the book of my life, which was essential because I had a very good run for a very long time. I had the life of Riley, great business. We were on holiday all the time. Every weekend we were out somewhere doing stuff, and we're not at the moment. We're not. And
do you think, because when we first met in 2013, there was such this rise. Like I've seen, like you go from working with different companies, consulting for Porsche, like these massive companies. When everyone needed you, you'd built up such an exposure. It was kind of, I don't want to use the word victim as in victim of your own success, but everyone knew Steve is this guy that will help them mindset wise. Now we need someone to help mindset wise, but yes, you want to help people, but also we take the finger off the trigger with our own energy, and you start giving your energy away more and more. So it was kind of, got to that level, like, geez, like now it's time to look after yourself again.
No, it is. And if I'm honest, I've started working with a counselor, wonderful woman. And she actually said to me, how much peer support time have you had in the last about 8 years now. So hardly any. She says we legally by requirement have an hour and a half a month to bring the flannel to offload. And I thought, okay, that's a part of it, yeah. It comes to a stage where when you've dealt with everything, obviously I know, people probably won't want to hear certain words, but when you've dealt with everything that a human can experience, good, bad, and ugly, everything. With empathy, with mirror neurons, you can't help but have that hit you at some level. It's almost impossible to just leave it on the table and not have it impact you in any way. And I realized that you start to give so much that you give of yourself, and that's dangerous because that starts to deplete your reserves. And I think that's part of the emotional exhaustion as well. And I realized that, probably too late. But if anything, coming back to your question, it's very humbling, and it's a reminder that in the good times, let's drill right down to the core of it. Doing the work when you don't think you need to. That's what I learned. That's what I learned. You're fit and healthy. It's okay to miss gym sessions and let your diet slip a bit. Hydration, it's okay. Your head's in a good place. You don't need to meditate, mindfulness, forget that.
Practicing what you preach.
It's the act of doing it. Prevention's better than cure, right? It's the act of doing it that keeps it there so that in an emergency situation, you're fit for purpose and you can rely on you. And I got to the stage where I couldn't rely on me. I was desperate to rely on other people and realized I couldn't rely on them either, in the nicest way. Hardly anyone could reach me. And not because I didn't want them to. I asked for help, but hardly anyone could reach me. Firstly, because I didn't know what was wrong physically. No amount of meditation is going to fix a cataract. I don't care what your agenda is. No amount of mindfulness and mantras and yoga at 6 a.m. is going to fix a cataract. It's surgery. And then with the fatigue, it's a ridiculous level of fatigue, almost unbearable level of fatigue where, you won't leave the house for 4 or 5 days on end. And that was a hard pill to swallow because, let's say a typical ladder, let's say you're 3 out of 10 on health, not to judge anyone, just being brutally honest. Let's say you're 3 out of 10 and long COVID gives you 1. You feel like shit. You don't leave the house. You're struggling. You're suffering. I feel like I've gone from 8 or 9 to -7. And that's what hits harder because a lot of people have said the people suffering the most were actually very fit and healthy beforehand. And they've noticed an incredible difference. Like the nurse I spoke to when I was finally referred to the long COVID clinic, which unfortunately couldn't help me in any way, shape or form at all, was a marathon runner. And it's taken her 2 years to get back to doing something like half marathons. 2 years, Ollie. Now, this is someone that used to do like terrain ultras up in the Lake District, the tough stuff. She said I couldn't do a lap in my local park. It knocked the stuffing out of me. And as I said, it's not about the violin. It's about being brutally honest and realizing so many people have hidden illnesses we know nothing about.
I think,
if you used to see me, he's got his Spartan Super T-shirt, the trophies in the cabinet. I could still roll up the bloody frying pan if I need to. The grip's still there.
You don't really need to roll up frying pans, by the way.
Nobody needs to roll up frying pans unless you really do want to cook your eggs in seconds, you know?
But I think it goes to show that we will speak to people that are potential clients and we will say prevention beats the cure. Some people won't do anything until they get hit by it. But I know for certain, absolute 100% certain, if that, first off, one, and I'd written a note here, which I have to get it across before we go any further, is that if I hadn't done the work with you in 2014, 15, I would not have survived through COVID because I would have done something stupid. I'm pretty certain of it because of how addicted to the training I used to be. And even more if it was 2012 when I last competed. So I'm massively thankful for that. But it also, if I was that guy that was smashing things like I used to do, shit, I remember coming to you for Achilles issues after I tried to run 2 marathons in a month.
Yeah.
we look at the fitness side, but don't look deeper at what this is doing to our body.
Yeah.
And how like more is usually better longevity wise and health wise. If I was that guy that was hitting PBs all the time, I had COVID. Unfortunately, I decided to get COVID 2 days before I was supposed to speak in London. So I had to then do my presentation on Zoom, which was really frustrating. I had 2 years to get it, and I get it 2 days before my first public speaking event for 2 years. But because of the work I'd done functional medicine wise, from the knowledge that I've learned from myself, the research and doing different things, different courses, from working with our friend Cliff, and different people, my body was able to hold together.
Yeah.
But that was because I'd seen these signs a few years earlier and started the work there. Most people don't see those signs, or we push them to the side, right? The waking through the night, the brain fog, the flipping out at people that are closest to you for no particular reason, constantly being addicted to work, not being able to put our phone down. But these are the things that they take time to fix. Completely. And for a lot of people, it's hard work. Well, for me and for you, like it's hard work to fix these things, and it doesn't happen overnight. But I just wish, and I'm sure you do as well, that don't want to put words in your mouth, but I wish people would take note of their health more earlier before it does a lasting issue. Not sign up for me necessarily, not sign up for you necessarily, but look at the free content, realize actually that is happening to me, and do some work. Be selfishly selfish.
No, I completely. And this might be a bit of curveball, but do you want my honest opinion to that?
Go.
It doesn't matter.
They need to suffer from it, or
we're not responsible for them. And as painful as that would say, and even it's like, well, but you're a coach, your job's to help people. And you know what? If you run around wanting to change people that aren't ready and getting frustrated because you see the ticking time bomb and the train is just going to literally bang in 5 years' time, you will probably die much younger because of your own level of stress and angst and frustration and wanting to be this savior. And there's a great story about the tugboat on the lighthouse. You know, the tugboat is flying around trying to get everyone, and the lighthouse is sitting there shining the light and saying, I see you.
Yep.
I love you. I understand your pain. I understand your plight. I'm not going to jump in. I'm not going to rescue you. And I'm not going to tell you what I think you need to hear. But I'm here when you're ready. And that's the difference. I'm not here to save a world that doesn't want to save themselves. I'm here to guide people that get to a stage in life where they say, you know what? I've got to do something about this. I don't know what to do. There's too much noise and confusion. I don't even know where to start. I've got a track record of failure. You know, the classic January resolution that lasts 2 or 3 weeks and we nosedive, join the gym, forget it, can't stop, can't help myself, the learned helplessness, the falling off the wagon, the it doesn't matter. They want genuinely to work beyond that. And if I'm honest, sorry if it hurts, learn to trust themselves again and actually respect and love the person in the mirror, because that's the most important relationship you have. It isn't about anyone else. They can help you, they can guide you, they can't walk for you, they can't write the chapter for you, they can't go to the gym for you, they can't eat for you. It is all on you. And it's also on you to realize your own level of worth as a sentient being. And when you deconstruct all the noise and the conditions and the labels and attachment and the fear, the shame and the guilt and the past and the worry, and exhale and surrender. And when self is left under that pile of absolute confusion, and you realize that showing up to meet your needs is an act of kindness to you. It's a gift that you give yourself. You are then also able to not only send it out to others, but also receive it from them. It's the same with love, and it's the same with forgiveness. Because so many people do not realize that they are the screenwriter and architect of their story. And just to go back to my son before I do forget it, you mentioned the walk. I got Leo to walk a marathon at Thetford.
At
We
7
didn't
years
make
old,
it
he said.
we didn't make it the first time. We didn't have time. We'd have had to come home and do another 3 hours because we got there a bit late. I realized that walking 26 miles as a kid, and let's be honest, you got a spectrum of things here. You could have the extreme saying that's child abuse, and then you have the people that completely get it. And I didn't drag him. I said to him, do you want to do this? And he realized it. And Ollie, let me tell you why I made my child. No, I didn't make him. Let me tell you why I took my son to walk an off-road marathon in 12 hours. Because I said to him, and I can feel the emotion building up now, mainly because of my own 12 months. It's all come full circle, mate, full circle. I said to him, when you are an adult, and I didn't say these, but when the shit hits the fan, relationship issues, you don't get into uni, you failed your job interview, you didn't, when the big stuff hits you and it knocks you to your knees, remember who you are. The kid that walked a marathon. That's who you are. Strong, independent, courageous, a leader, gifted with the ability to think and act your way out of any problem you will face in life. And when it hits, instead of falling overboard, help, I don't come back to those steps. His foot hurt, his ankle hurt, he had a blister, he was tired. Didn't die, was never going to die. It was mental toughness. It was resiliency. It's an anchor of this is what you can do. And if you can do that, what can you now do in this situation as an adult, as a strong, resilient leader?
That's powerful. It's super powerful.
I'm not here to protect my kids, mate. I'm not here to protect them. And people might think, what? That's your primary job. It's part of the package. I'm not here to protect them. I am here to prepare them to fully integrate with society and do as minimal damage to themselves and others as they live a meaningful life. And experience love and anger and happiness and sadness and joy and frustration and loss and regret and what the whole spectrum of being human, because there are no wrong instruments in the orchestra. I don't want them to be embarrassed about a thought or desperate to get rid of a feeling. I want them to be, because here's the thing, we're human beings, that have largely become human thinkings and overthinking. And for me, evolution has become a human doing. Action is a superpower. Action is your way out of every struggle, stress, and problem you will face. Because here's the thing, if you are in it and it's happening and you don't like it, only an idiot stays there complaining. Boom, what are my options? I got a toolbox. Who can I call? What can I do? Who can help? All the resources are online, and most of the answers also reside in here and here. Yeah.
We've got a quote on our fridge. We've got like this whiteboard for shopping, but I end up put a quote on there because rather than that we need to get more food. But it was, most of our suffering comes from our inability to take, or most of our, not inability, what is it? Most of our suffering comes from not taking action. What are you not acting on?
Exactly.
And it's so true. We get frustrated about things. What are we not acting on? What are we not doing? And I think, like you said, you touched on that about people say it's child abuse or abuse. Proper Norfolk there. As proper Norfolk, a child abuse. But it's done through inspiration. It's done through you being a role model.
Through love.
Yeah, but
it's done through love of the highest order, because I know who you will become or who society will tell you you should be if I don't have a positive influence at some level in creating an independent, strong, free-thinking, intelligent adult.
Yeah, but if Leo hadn't seen you doing these inspirational things growing up, he sees you as a leader, as a role model. How many kids see their parents sitting down watching junk on TV. And everyone's obviously has their own choice for doing this, but how many kids see their parents eating takeout after takeout and then telling them to eat more vegetables, not doing exercise, telling them to get out in the fresh air, all these different things.
You've got to look at where
these kids are a sponge, right? They absorb that stuff
completely. Live the example.
Not child abuse.
Live, and you know what? In the nicest way, everyone's free to their opinion. But you've got to realize it is an opinion. And here's the thing, and I think this is a great way of clearing up what I'm seeing in terms of opinion and people just literally waking up offended and then wanting to get rid of it in some way. If you watch a movie and tell me, Steve, you've got to see this movie. It was great. And I watch that movie and say, Ollie, that movie was terrible. You don't change your mind because I've got a different opinion, do you? And that's perception. The thing. You know, can you see the stupidity of believing that everything should fit how you think and feel? People think, oh, it made your kid walk a marathon? Child abuse. I'd say child abuse in the nicest way, and I coach with compassion, and I hope it comes along. If you are sitting there 20 stone, hating life, stuffing yourself with junk, miserable, with young children that are seeing you as an influential figure that's dictating how they live and act in the world. And in the nicest way, and I've had a client say this, the fat pig in the mirror. This is how the language they use to refer to themselves, the fat pig in the mirror. And I said, if you live on that channel, what are you teaching the kids that are learning who to be from you? And it hit them like a rock. And I said, sorry to go there, but you've got to realize this. You make the effort. And shall we quickly talk about zombies to bring home that truth of action?
Yep.
Well, let's go zombies, right? If you look at anything like I Am Legend or, you know, Walking Dead, that kind of stuff, what do you notice about nature?
I haven't seen Walking Dead, and it's been a long while since I Am Legend.
It starts to, so you've got tarmac, you've got sidewalks.
Nature takes over.
Nature takes over. You look at Chernobyl, yeah?
Yeah.
You've got foliage growing out of concrete. You've got vines that go up on the side of buildings. You know, literally you've got a concrete jungle that then actually becomes green. You've got you've got trees and vines. You know, we're talking it climbs up the support and goes over into the flyover the motorway. So here's the thing. The only thing that doesn't need any input on our behalf is nature. It's been here longer than us and will probably be here long after us. Nature does not need any. We can help. You can water plants and you can prune stuff. And we, on the other hand, are the complete opposite. We have needs that have to be met in order for us to flourish. We cannot run without some degree of care. And no matter how difficult a pill that is to hear and swallow and actually take on board and act upon, if you cannot do it for you for whatever reason, then extend that and bring your children into that equation and realize that by them getting a better and eventually, hopefully, the best version of you that you can be with the time, resources, and effort applied and available, that influences their life significantly. You're giving them a rolling start rather than a ball and chain. And it is tough when you see people literally eat themselves to death and not care. It's tough to see, but it's also, I'd say liberating, maybe the wrong word, but it fits the bill. I'd say it's liberating for you to then distance yourself from that, unless they're a client, obviously. You know, we don't do what we do to judge or harm in any way. But if you jump in when the Titanic's going down and say, I've got to rescue these people, you're going to die with them. And people don't get that. You've got to look after you, your level of energy, your level of strength, of resiliency, of awareness, so that you are then the best version of you for other people that choose to come into your world. And if you go out there with, you know, your bag on your back and you're going to help everyone, you're probably going to die in the process. It will overwhelm you. It will break you at some level. You know, to sit with the fact that too many people have given up on themselves at an incredible level is heartbreaking, but it is what it is.
That's powerful.
And that's the way I removed so much of the suffering that was a part of my own life. You put a cat video up and millions of likes and views. You literally give people a blueprint of why they suffer, what to do about it, and what change consists of, in terms of mindful awareness and language, and 2 thank yous and 5 likes.
That involves responsibility, though.
You've got to take action, haven't you? You've got to take action.
So.
And here's the thing with action is, when there's no one left to blame, the only person in the room is you. And then you get to realize a very painful truth. You are responsible for you at every level. And in the nicest way, you are also the architect of most of your pain. And when you stop blaming others, you've got the option, through acceptance and responsibility, of doing something about it. Because when you blame someone else, you also give them the responsibility of how you feel. Oh, it's not, I fell off the wagon. It's not, what does that actually mean? It means, here's thing, wallop, gone. Don't care where it lands. Not my problem anymore. And we see this again and again and again. And when you take ownership, and I get it, as painful as that is, true ownership, my vehicle that I lease and am responsible for until I sign out and whatever next adventure awaits me, it's yours. You are the leaseholder of this gift, this glorious gift that allows you to do your work, impact lives, be there for your family, travel the world and have a huge impact. And I'm not saying that, literally Stephen Hawking didn't have a body that done much and still influenced the world in a bigger way than probably you or I could ever do. Who knows? But can you see the problem of people picking the opposite or the extreme? Like, I'll say to you, Ollie, almost every person on this planet is less than 7 feet tall. And the person that says, but my cousin's 7'3", hasn't won an argument. They've actually proved your point, because you said almost everyone is under 7 foot, and their outlier is an absolute truth of normal distribution. So instead of looking for the extremes and the counterexample, stop thinking and take action. Reach out to one of us, go onto a course, call a coach, find a guide. And I'll tell you why. You may well find yourself at a stage in some point where so much damage has been done, you have already lost more years than you'd like to give away. Smoking with lung damage, it doesn't reverse. You don't get a new set of lungs. You live with what you've done, and that could potentially take a chunk of time off.
Yep. I think just before we finish, let's go to that Socrates thing, because you've just said about the recommendation that Steve gave me back in 2014, I think it was a film called Peaceful Warrior. And there's a book as well, Dan Millman, and it's based on a true story, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we won't go into the depths as such, but there's a guy there that this gymnast meets at a petrol station, and he ends up calling him Socrates.
Yeah.
And this was where it just totally changed my life. There was that, Wayne Dyer's The Shift, and the book Mind Made Prison.
Yeah.
Those 3 things were recommendations, but I would highly, highly recommend. You can see them on YouTube. I mean, I've got the DVD for Peaceful Warrior and recommend it so many times, but it's all about taking out the trash and being in this moment and actually living your life. And I think that's super, super powerful when, as I say, I call Stephen Socrates now, and like it's a little joke as such, but it's the impact. And I would just highly recommend taking action. Where can people get in touch with you? You've said about courses, about coaching.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, this, which is, I think you can see that obviously I got the eye surgery and other bits and pieces. But as a program, I've spent months building Train and Brain. I think this will nicely full circle us, because I mentioned earlier that I was full physical, then I went full mental, not in a crazy sense, and realized that even that, you can really lose yourself in the mindfulness. You can get to such a state of peace that it almost can become neglectful, where you don't want you're in such a good place, you don't need to do anything else. You don't need to do, you're there, you've arrived, you are at peace. You see the illusion of separation and conflict. You know the cause and effect nature of suffering. You don't play the games anymore. You get it. And then your job, once you've moved from victim to observer, is to come back as active agent and actually be there as a guide for people that also want to take that journey. And then that's why Train and Brain existed, was created, because train, physical fitness, brain, mental well-being, inner peace, mental health. I combine those into a program because I know that most of that normal distribution, most of the people, most of the time, actually benefit from both. It's no good focusing on one. Both will move you so much further forwards because there's an interplay at every level of one hitting on the other at some level. Train and Brain as a coaching program will be delivered as in what we got here. It's two big engines. Its boosters are a podcast and a YouTube channel, which I'm sure you'll be on at some point in the future, mainly because they're the same thing. One doesn't have video. They're very easy. Extract as audio, extract full thing. And that will be live. I estimate I'm probably looking at launching that as a January program, if I'm honest, to catch everyone that's just about to fall foul to the resolutions that nosedive because they've turned up thinking that they can finally hate themselves healthy or hate themselves happy through true grit and determination and unsustainable diets. When you are in a place of operating from kindness and compassion, the journey that you walk is conducive to change. You're not forcing or berating. I think of it as a prison sentence. Diet, by definition, we use it as some clinical intervention because we've been terrible or messed up and have to chastise ourselves in some way. Diet from the Greek means way of life. And yet over here it's like diet. Wow, you gotta suffer because you've been bad. So as a program, the idea is it covers the physical fitness and the mental well-being, because I know that at some point in the future, most of the people going through that will have enough skills to not need me. And that's the true gift a coach can give to anyone: independence.
It's powerful. It's absolutely powerful. So is your website up at the moment, or is it just social media?
It is. No, you've got the strengthacademy.com. You've got trainandbrain.co.uk. There's actually I'll tell you what, I'm glad you mentioned it. If you go to trainandbrain.co.uk, there's a big button that says start now. In fact, log in and tell me. Let me shift across. So if I go to trainandbrain.co.uk,
the word and
trainandbrain.co.uk. So yeah, there's a great big button that says start now. And if you click on that, I mean, I'm a big fan of over delivering. I feel that particularly with this area, you've got someone's entire life and well-being. I'm not teaching you how to fold paper or varnish your decking or something like that. We are talking your livelihood. We are talking your health as an individual.
Oh, you got a video of me on there.
For me to build know, like, and trust, I've over delivered.
Yep.
You click on that start now, you have got a course that I could easily charge quite a lot for.
Video,
that you could probably get an incredible result from without ever needing me. And it's completely free because I am building up relationships and reputation by turning up with my thing and placing it on your doorstep and saying thank you and disappearing. And I want you to go through that and action the content. And there's 30 videos of mindfulness and awareness. There's workouts, there's meditations, there's journals, there's fat loss trackers, there's qigong, there's different breathing extracts, there's meal play. You got all of it. Most people going through that will make progress. And if you then wanted to jump in to the group program, which is the flagship one, which is actually live daily at 10 o'clock, where you'll work out with me, we'll meditate, we'll go through talks and presentations, there'll be guest speakers in. You've got hot seats where if you've got some issues that are bigger than a Q&A, we'll dive in. We will go there and we will unpick some of the stuff and the struggles that you're facing in this moment. And then Friday's the big free-for-all where we just have a Q&A, a catch-up, looking at goals, looking at progress, accountability, and then I disappear. And I know that this is going to change thousands of lives. And I'm so fired up to deliver it because with my own crash and then coming back, I realized the value of health at an absolute core level. I realized the value of a sound mind in a body that is fit for purpose and not a burden. And that is my gift to people that are ready to jump into this journey. Trainandbrain.co.uk. Click start now, and you've probably got something that I could easily sell for 200 or 300 quid for absolutely nothing. And you don't even get added to an email sequence where I bombard you to twist your arm and use NLP techniques to hard sell you. None of that. None of that. I literally am not in your world. I'm there. I'm delivering. You follow. It has an impact. If you want anything else beyond that, you'll know where to find me. That's how I operate. Absolute integrity.
That is powerful, Stephen. And honestly, guys, just get onto that course and go through it. Stephen's changed my life for the better. And I'm glad to have him as a friend, as a mentor from further away. And I'm looking forward to grabbing another fry up with him in the near
future.
Got to
do it, man.
Once I'm back from my trip.
One of our low-calorie small breakfasts.
Exactly. So thank you for joining me. I'll pop all the details. There'll be a blog post with all the podcasts and everything on there, with the Train and Brain course information. But Stephen, thank you so much for joining me.
You're most welcome. Take care, my man.
Take care.